$150 out of my
like
pocket.
Low-key pricey.
Can I get Bobby Marks to fix my finances? Hey, Bobby, good morning, man. I need you to fix my finances for David Buster's. My tax threshold. I'm in the second apron right now. How do I get into the second apron at David Buster's, Bobby?
Yeah, you're going to have a hard time getting out of that.
Yeah, no, that's
Shouldn't have maxed out baby chest.
Yeah, I maxed her out too early, Bobby. And she's only 3.5, so I got a long way to go. Bobby, thanks so much for joining us, man. I know you're a busy guy during this time. Sure. We really, really appreciate the time. You let us know when you have to go. Obviously, Bobby works for ESPN, the NBA front office insider here, so it's all about Klay, the tax, and everything here. So, Klay Thompson, you were under the impression that he could get $30 million a season. I was too. I was in that camp with you. I thought Klay would get it on the open market. But has your mindset changed on that after the Malik Monk deal in Sacramento?
Well, I mean, the Malik is different. The Malik Monk, basically that was the most they could pay him in Sacramento. So I don't know if you could compare what the value of what Klay is and what the value of Malik Monk is. I think, listen, we've known all along that there was going to be 5 teams that have cap space. This is not a league that's flushed with money this offseason. If this was next offseason, we could certainly say different. But when you look at the 5 teams that have room, Detroit, Utah, Oklahoma City, Philadelphia, and Orlando. And, Oklahoma City and Orlando are kind of operating on a different timeline where they basically have a 2-year window before things are going to get expensive. We'll see what happens in Philadelphia as far as what direction they go in. So although we think what the value of the player is always not what the market tells us here. So I think that's what we'll continue to learn. And I think probably where Golden State sees Klay. I just think you have to be careful with, Klay's made a lot of money in his career. So, you do get to a point where your quality of life, for him and where he's happy at, overshadows, the ability to go out and, try to get $25 million from a team.
So that being said, what do you think where do you think he ends up? And what do you think it looks like in terms of years and approximate money? If you had to guess, obviously.
Yeah, I think he's a 2-year, probably, he's a 2-year guy on a 2-year contract. I think, you can take the hardline stance if you're Golden State and say we're not bidding against anybody or we're not competing against anyone, or you can take the approach that some teams have done in the past where you're saying, we know that there's a limited market out there, but we still think this player has value and we still want to reward that player. So I think, and that's why I said, you have to be careful if you're Golden State here, because who's to say that Klay Thompson goes sign somewhere for $13 million? I wouldn't start out the window there. So listen, I think the best for him to probably maximize if he's looking for a big contract, it is probably in Golden State. It is probably somewhere between maybe $20 and $25 million. It's just a matter of if that's the direction he wants to go.
So let's just say in this hypothetical, if he stays with the Warriors and I'm going to go even lower, let's say $15 million, how much wiggle room does that give the Warriors to make moves, to make trades? How does it make it easier or more difficult for them to assemble their team for next year? Yeah, you're assuming Chris gets waived, right? Yes, I would assume if they keep Klay, they waive Chris.
Yeah. They would. In any scenario, I think Chris Paul is probably going to be the odd man out, even if they decide that Klay is going to go elsewhere. I think that's where, you have Chris on the roster. You're $175 million. That doesn't include Klay. So I don't think that makes much sense at all. So yeah, if Klay's not there, or if he's there at a $15 million, I would be stunned if he got a $15 million contract. I think he would sign elsewhere if that's what the money's on the table. Then you have the potential to have your $12.9 million non-tax mid-level exception. You can go out and you'll be below the aprons where you can go out and try to acquire a player in a trade and not face financial restrictions.
So, Bobby, let's get something clear. Let's get some clarity for the audience here. If the Warriors do waive Chris Paul and they're off the hook for that $30 million and Klay walks, where does that leave their salary cap without those 2 players if they walk, Bobby?
Yeah, you'll be right at the salary cap. I think you have like $142, $143 million in salary. You're $30 million below the tax, so you do have the access to your non-tax, which is 12.9, and your biannual at 4.7. You're well below the first apron and the second apron. It gives you more maneuverability as far as to go out and try to acquire a player in trade.
Interesting. That's interesting. Go ahead, Shasta.
Well, what does the framework of a deal look like if they were to make a trade? And there are a lot of hypotheticals regarding Paul George opting in and then getting extended after he gets traded somewhere. So let's go down that path.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see it. It's hard for me to see a scenario of going trade wise when you have Klay still on your roster. I think that presents somewhat of a challenge here. But let's just say that if the trade presented itself at the end of the week and you were able to get a Paul George type player, Paul George is making $49 million. So you've got to get closer to around $40 million in salary. So you're certainly looking at Wiggins. You're certainly looking at maybe Peyton. You're certainly probably looking at at least one of your young guys, whether it be Moody and Kuminga. I think if you're the Clippers, you would certainly want Kuminga. So it's just about getting up to that $40 million number.
Interesting stuff there. Bobby Marks here on the Morning Roast on 95.7 The Game. What's the perception of Klay from what you gather around the league? What are other teams thinking about Klay? I know he's sensitive, and we see it here in the Bay Area every single day. Yeah. But what is his perception from what you're gathering, Bobby?
I think it's just the ability to kind of accept the role where he is at this stage in his career, and if the ability to accept the role if maybe it changes during the course of the year, whether if he struggles or maybe that team. I think he would be perfect in Oklahoma City. But that's at probably 20 to 25 minutes a game. So I think that's the biggest thing is that. When teams meet with him or have the opportunity to meet with him at the end of the week, it's about kind of accepting the role at this stage of his career.
So, all right, when I look at the Warriors, they do have decisions here. Any trade that they would like to make, everyone's going to want Kuminga involved in that, but Kuminga's due for an extension, I believe, by approximately October 31st. A team needs to know what they're going to do with Kuminga in terms of extending him. How much does that change his value in a trade? And what do you think an extension looks like for Jonathan Kuminga for the Warriors or any team?
Yeah, they have to the day before the start of the regular season. So you're looking at October 21st. He'll be restricted. So I think you have to have the mindset that if Kuminga puts together another good year and takes another step, it's probably going to cost you more than $30 million a year. I think that's probably realistic. What the market will be, the cap will increase for next year and the year after. So as the cap increases, so do salaries here. So yeah, I think certainly if Paul George ever became available and there's no way for him to get to a team like the Warriors without a trade, then he would be the first player that you would be looking for.
Interesting stuff. How far away are the Warriors in your eyes, Bobby, from being a contender again?
I think it would be a lot easier if you're in the East.
You're not lying about that.
You guys, listen. Denver's not going anywhere. Dallas brings back every player on their roster. We will see what happens with the Clips and the Lakers. Minnesota's not going anywhere. Memphis will be better. Houston will be better. Phoenix, we'll see what happens there. I think I think there's a fine line between. I think they're a good team. I think there's a fine line between a good team and a contender.
Yeah, I'm with you there, Bobby. Real quick on Utah, because you mentioned them being one of the 5 teams with all the cap space. And we know they have a tough time attracting free agents coming to Salt Lake City, but there's been a lot of rumors about Lauri Markkanen. It's going to be a free agent after next season. Warrior fans are in love with the name. I don't even know how much basketball they've watched Lauri Markkanen play, but they're in love with him. He's a solid player. What are you hearing on the front with him in Utah? Are they looking to dangle him? And what type of price would he attract for the Utah Jazz? Are we talking multiple first-round picks, players? What about Lauri Markkanen's market right now?
Well, he's extension eligible in July, and then they can also renegotiate his contract with cap space, similar to what Sabonis did last year. So I think the goal is for them to retain him. They've been rebuilding for 2 years right now since they broke up that roster in Utah. So I would keep an eye on potentially them renegotiating his contract and trying to lock him up long term.
All right, Bobby, let's just suspend some reality here, and let's say I'm giving you the Warrior job right now. You take over as GM, and you got, let's say, a handful of moves. How would you navigate this offseason? What would be your priorities? Who's in, who's out? Just rat-a-tat-tat them, like hypothetically. And we're not going to hold you to this. I'm just curious how your mind views where the Warriors are at.
I would waive Chris at the end of the week, and I would probably go in a different direction with Klay.
Yep.
And I would focus more on my younger players. Now, what does that send to Steph Curry or Draymond Green? I don't know. That's something that Mike's going to have to figure out, and ownership's going to have to figure out. But that's kind of that. If I was there, that would probably be the direction I would be leaning towards.
What would you do with Wiggins?
Well, I mean, I think certainly if something comes around, I don't know if I'm in a position just to dump him. I don't think they have to do that right now. Certainly, if you're getting off of Chris's money.
Yeah, I wonder what Wiggins' value is around the league because a lot of people are up and down. But Bobby, look, you need perimeter defenders. If we learned anything about these playoffs or the last few playoffs, perimeter defense works. You need it. Boston had it. OKC had it at some point. Minnesota had it. You need some wing at the point of attack. So. I'm with you. I wouldn't just give up Wiggins for anything. I just don't know what type of player you could get back for him right now after the season he just had, Bobby.
Well, he's got one less year on his contract, so you can, that's one. The less, the better. But yeah, I mean, I think it's, as you guys know, it's hard making trades to get equal value or better value. As I said, I think if you just wanted to get rid of his contract, you could do it, and maybe it will cost you. But I don't think that's the direction you want to go in.
Yeah, I'm with you, Bobby. Bobby, thanks so much for the time today. I know you're a busy man, but that you brought a lot of clarity about the cap, about the mid-level, what happens if they let Chris Paul walk and Klay Thompson walk. But we're kind of all in the same camp. We think changes will be made. Just don't know how big the changes are for the Golden State Warriors. Bobby, thanks so much for the time, man. We really appreciate it.
Guys. Thank you. Talk to you.
Great
Absolutely.
stuff.
Bobby Marks, ESPN NBA front office insider, former GM with the Brooklyn Nets. So here's the deal. If Klay Thompson walks and they waive Chris Paul,